Hello, career thought leaders and resume writers. Today, we're going to be talking about how we can really use strategy and some of the other hidden tips, hidden tricks that resume writers use to make a resume really connect with an employer. So, we know the market is flooded with applications, fake job seekers, which seems crazy, right? There's fake job seekers out there because now they can create bots and we can apply to jobs without being a real human. So how do our clients compete with that, right? How do they stand out in this market? And of course, we know job search strategy, networking, being a known person is the best way. And yet we still need a good resume. We still need a good story. And so, how do we help people do that, regardless of how they get into the company? They will need to tell their story. And if they are applying online, which remember through our job search numbers is not a bad thing, especially if you apply directly to the company's website. That's how 40 plus percent of people get hired, applying directly to the company website. But how do you stand out with all of the mess that is happening out there in the market? So let's talk about first we're going to talk a little bit about data because, we talk data. And then we'll talk about some of the strategies that they can use to stand out. So go ahead and drop a note to let me know that you're joining us. Love to hear from you. And we're going to dive in. So let's talk a little bit about some hiring data. So there is a kind of a common thing out there that comes from a study by the Ladders that says that we look at a resume for 6 to 8 seconds in the first scan. It's interesting because JobVite, who's now Employ, that does research from employers, they actually found that that number was quite a bit higher. And I don't think the number really matters. What we know, and if you've ever hired, you know that when you get the resumes, you're looking through quickly the first time to see who's qualified, right? Who has the right job titles, who has done similar things to what I'm asking people to do. That's our first skim. And I think it's important we realize not just the amount of time. Yes, they're skimming quickly, but what are they looking for? They're looking for titles, probably the number one thing. They're looking for skills. I was reading some things today about skills-based hiring, and we tend to make it into like that means anybody could do anything. And that's really not what we're talking about when we talk about skills-based hiring. Skills-based hiring means that instead of looking for a degree, translating, that's the right word, of translating what you've done in the past into this language of the future. You've got to show the skills demonstrated. Putting them into a skills list does not work. Like skills-based hiring doesn't mean like, oh, if you've got this skills list on your resume, all of a sudden I'm giving you a call. No, it means that maybe I'm not looking for that degree, but I'm still looking for people that have those skills, which most of the time I'm going to expect come from doing a similar job. So we have to not just be worried about a skills list at the top, or sometimes we're putting it at the bottom of a resume now. We're thinking, how can I demonstrate that my client has these skills, that they've used them in a job, that they've used them to add value, all of those things. That's what skills-based hiring really means. Yes, excellent. Hi, Bruce. Good to see you. It's been a while. Lovely. Jane, thanks for joining us. Hi, Anne. So good to see you. Oh, and Andrea, excellent. Thank you all for joining me. I can't wait to hear what you think about some of these things. Okay, so we know they're looking quickly. We can listen to and deduct with some common sense what they're looking for. So here's the thing. This was in a 2024 resume builder study. 40% of hiring managers say that resumes are too vague or overly generic. And of course, AI is part of the problem there. We're going to talk about how AI could be part of the solution, which we talked about last Friday as well. But even if our clients aren't using AI, They're likely being too generic or general when they're talking about their jobs and what they've done. And this isn't just about duty versus accomplishment focused, although that is important. But I've seen people try to write in value add language where it's still generic, right? Increased this. You can still be generic with that. So it's about getting to the specific stories that connect the dots for the employers, which is where we're going to talk about here today. Last little bit of data that I'll say is that 1 in 4 recruiters say that they can spot AI generated content. Again, those generic things and some of the specific phrases we talked about on Friday, like ensuring and successfully, those make it stand out. But that generic language and the same kind of flow, there's like a cadence to AI written content that's really easy to identify once you've gotten started. So we know that recruiters are looking for skills, they're looking for titles, but we have to make sure that our resumes aren't just, lists, but they're really strategic documents that focus in on how do I speak to the employer's pain, what they're hoping for, what they're looking for in a way that shows I've done that, which means I can do it. This is a very small language thing that makes a huge difference that I see in almost every summary, even of the beginning professional writers that we work with in our Academy Certified Resume Writer program. I see people write about what they can do or what they're able to do instead of what they've done. Watch out for those words, especially in your summary. Capable of, able to, whatever similar phrases you might see, get them out of your summary section and tell me what the person has done. Summarize their experience and their value, the accomplishments, not just their skills or their capabilities. The skills and capabilities should be wrapped up in the statements of what they've actually done, what they've actually achieved, so that we can sell that, not what they're able to do. Just makes them sound like, I want to, I want to be, instead of a have done. And we want to stick with have done. Okay, so let's talk about a few of these specific skills that we as professional resume writers can bring to a client that they're missing, typically by themselves and most of the time with AI, unless they're a super duper super user. So the first thing is synthesizing a bunch of information and figuring out what really matters. So let's say, and here's an example from one of my clients here in the past. So this person had worked as an applications engineer, sales engineer, kind of hands-on person, and also been on the sales side, right? As a sales engineer, my Dropbox or something um, to get some more bandwidth. Okay, yay, we're back. I think we took a break. I think I took a moment. So let me start over with my example. So working with a client who'd been sales engineer, technical engineer, applications engineer, always had that kind of engineer in their title, but been on the sales side of things and helped a little bit with marketing strategy, sales strategy, and hopefully it's back. So we've been in a technical role. And the challenge when you apply, again, when you apply to a job, a lot of people are going to look at your titles first. So they're seeing engineer, 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 and they're thinking, why would I hire this person to be in marketing? They're technical, they're an engineer, right? So we've got to help the client tell the story. We've got to see the through line and help them use the language to share why they've got that marketing background. So the first thing that I do is look through the job descriptions they're aiming for, product manager, marketing, those types of things. Okay, what are the stories that they're looking for? Then I'm helping the person go through their background and find those specific stories that demonstrate the marketing skills. So it doesn't matter what your title was, if you're doing these activities, that's what we're going to demonstrate. Those are the stories we want to tell. Now, as you're doing that, and this is the way that I've found it easiest to work in anyways, is that as I'm doing that, I'm building these stories, I'm looking at each job, and I'm looking for those marketing and sales stories. As I'm doing that, we're making sure that the language is aligned to the new job. That's not just keywords, right? But it's a lot deeper. It's the stories that matter. And we're building that picture of this person as a sales and marketing professional who, yes, has always been kind of at that technical side of things. If there's latitude, I may flip-flop or slightly adjust job titles. I know some people don't like this, but I know that employers are going to look at the job titles first. So if I have a little bit of latitude, right, sales engineer, applications engineer, if there's another way we can translate that, that will still be real and true and okay with everyone in the setting that they've been in, we might use that. So that we can adjust those first words that an employer is going to see to be as relevant as possible. But then it has to go beyond that. We have to pick the stories out of their experience that really demonstrate that market research, the going out and seeing customers, doing demos and figuring out what people are going to be able to use, the product development skills. We have to be able to pick out those stories that really fit. Now, the challenge is the person is still used to telling their stories in an engineer way. Oftentimes, like the summary on their resume is still very technical. And we have to make sure that we change it all, right? We can't just translate part of it. We've got to translate the whole story. So usually what I'll do with those types of people is I'll start over. I won't use their old summary. I won't even really use their old resume because I want to think about this is the audience. This is what matters. Let's get the stories that matter. Let's not try to look at the old language and adjust it. Let's just look at the new language, the same stories, but told in a much different way. That's what we're looking for. That's what we're aiming for. And then I'll build the summary from that so that it has the right language from the beginning. And it's that synthesis, that strategy that most people struggle with. And you can kind of force AI to do it, but you have to know that you're looking for it, and you have to know what questions you can ask, which if our clients knew that, they probably wouldn't be coming to us. They'd be doing it on their own anyways, which is fine if you're out there and you're a job seeker and you can do it. But it's that letting go of the language of the past that most people struggle with because they think, well, I was an engineer. Well, that really doesn't matter unless you can tell me how those skills apply to the new job that you're aiming for. That's skills-based hiring, right? Is that I'm hiring someone who's used these skills in the past. If you can communicate it in a way that isn't connected to exact job title that you did it in, then great, we can move you through that. And it kind of gets to this other idea of pattern recognition, really being able to see what is an employer looking for in a role, and how can I speak to that in my work. And of course, we can use job descriptions to do this. We can ask our clients, especially if our clients have been in the field, they've got some idea of what employers are looking for. We talk about building a hiring manager persona in using AI, which can be really powerful. It's getting in that mindset of what is the employer really looking for? What words are they using? What are their pains? What goals are they trying to achieve? And when we do that, it's a much stronger resume. And then again, we're connecting that. What are they looking for to what does our client bring? And how do we put those two things together? And this takes it so much deeper than just keywords because I'm looking at the tone, at the voice that employers using. Are they really worried about innovation, or are they worried about profitability? What words am I going to choose that show I understand where they're going right now, the struggles that they're having? And it makes me feel like kind of that breath of fresh air, right? That this is who I need to hire because they get it. What is going on in the industry, and how can you help your clients show that they've solved similar problems in the past? Yes, it may be a new market and things are always changing, but how can we help them do that? Then the skill of a resume writer, and Deb Dib always said it was ruthless editing. So we are going through and we're really thinking about each specific statement. Does this matter? Does this fit? Does this add value? And it isn't about cutting it down to a certain amount of pages. Nope. We've shown over and over again that 2-page resumes are perfectly fine. In fact, they do better for most levels of careers than a 1-page. But it is about making sure every single word, every single story on that page adds value. There are some exceptions, right? And when we get to the about me kinds of sections that some people do on a resume, but even then we have to be aware of what's the perception going to be and how is this going to fit in. There was this conversation about interests and putting interests on a resume at the symposium with some of the recruiters there, because grad schools, undergraduate schools often tell people to include their interests. And that's fine, as long as, one, you have the space, you've said everything else that is important and is relevant, and two, you really understand what those interests are saying about you, and you're not walking into any of that blind, because everybody is going to, it opens up the door for bias a lot of times when you share those things. So it can be helpful, it can be hurtful. Yes, it shows you're more of a person than just your profession. I think there's other ways to do that than just listing interests on your resume. But, if there's space when you get done sharing the things that are relevant, you just have to do it thoughtfully. And really, it's much more than that. It's being strategic about everything that you share. And does this line up with the goal of what we're doing? We've been talking a lot lately, of course, about the federal to civilian transition. And here's the thing. I do not need to know the ins and outs of a federal job, the terminology, all of that, to help someone, because my goal is to help them tell the stories that matter to the future job. And I'm going to help them identify the stories that matter to the future job. Then we're going to say, okay, what have you done that lines up to that future job? I'm going to be helping them scrub out that language and jargon the whole time they're telling me those stories, because we don't need it anymore. And we're going to tell the stories that matter. So I don't care about their 10-page old federal resume. In fact, I would prefer to not even look at that until after we've gone through and we've thought about what they need, what the stories are that stand out right away. Then we might go through or use AI to go through and say, is there anything else in here that would be relevant that we may have missed? But most of the time, you get someone's old resume, no matter what their old job was, if they're making a transition, it can really muddy the waters of what they're looking for the future, because we want to stay as future focused as possible. We want to use the language of the future. We want to tell the stories that matter to the future. So that's what we're going to be thinking about. So when we're thinking about writing a resume, remember, it's all about focus and audience. Once I know my audience, what they care about, what types of jobs they're looking for me to do inside of the title that I might have, then it's a process of focusing, researching, and drawing out the things that they care about. And realizing that it's not just about the keywords, it's about the experiences that show I have the skill. As systems get smarter and better, it's not going to be just about the keyword. And in fact, for a lot of them, it's not right now, because they are doing pattern recognition. They're doing natural language processing. They're doing things that look for patterns, not just words. And we have to help our client identify the patterns, identify the experiences they're looking for someone to have had, and then tell the stories in their resume that demonstrate they have those experiences, not just the not just the skills, right? The skills are wrapped up in the experiences. And I almost wish they'd call it like experience-based hiring, although people would kind of flip out because then it's like, oh, you only want people who have the exact experience. But the more recruiters I talk to, the more I hear that actually is the case. That doesn't mean that your client has to have the exact experience, but it does mean they've got to do a really good job of connecting the dots, of talking about how the experiences they do have are relevant to the experience that the employer is hiring for. And it's hard. I mean, I don't think we can sugarcoat it. That part is not easy, to take something that you've been doing over here and tell the story in a way that demonstrates the experience over here. That's what we've got to help people do. And you can only do that when you really understand the audience and you really dig in to pull out the relevant experiences. So this piece of it is all about practice. And it's all about understanding how the two pieces connect. So being able to look at a job description and think about, okay, what information do I need to put into that specific resume? So we're doing a session on career change resumes next Friday. If you're interested in that, I will drop the link here. Drop me a little yes, I'm in or something, and I will send it to you directly if you want it. Next Friday, noon, we're doing a session on career change resumes. We've done them, I don't know, I feel like we do one every year, but every year there's new things to talk about, new nuances to add. This year, of course, being the federal to civilian transition that we'll be looking at. And so that piece of it, how do you help people do that? If you're ready to dive deep, we also have our Academy Certified Resume Writer program coming up starting May 7th. That is where you get to dive in and write resumes and get feedback. We give you case studies so that we can see how you help someone transition industries, how you help someone take a step up. Turning in your own client work is great, but we've set these up so that you can practice doing some of the more difficult things that we need to do as a resume writer, and that AI isn't going to touch for a long time. So if you want to do either of those, drop me a note. Happy to send you more information. And in the meantime, just remember that our goal is twofold, right? Helping our client understand the audience, really dig in. What are their challenges? What are their pains? Going through our client's story and understanding which parts of their work demonstrate the skills and experiences that align, and then doing the work to connect the dots, to translate from where they've been to where they want to go so that it's an immediate fit for an employer. That is our goal. And you've got to do both. So I've seen some people talking recently about like, oh, I really understood the employer. And so maybe you even had AI write something that's for the employer. But if it doesn't include any of you, it's like that Hollow Easter bunny. I love that example, especially since we just had Easter, right? The Hollow Easter bunny, where it sounds good, but it's just all glossy. And once I bite in, it's nothing but hot air. That's what we get when we focus completely on the employer and just writing things that we think they want to hear. It doesn't work. Then other people just focus completely on the candidate and their best stories. And that might be like the marshmallow filling inside of a bunny, where if you just had it by itself, like bleh, right? Sugar overload. We've got to have both, where you've got that good caramel or marshmallow filling and the chocolate around it. You have to find the places where those two things come together to make a strong resume. It can't just be the client's cool stories that don't fit. And it can't just be statements that you think the employer wants to hear that don't have any substance. Marry the two, and you've got that excellent Cadbury egg. That's what we're looking for. So I hope that's helpful. If you have any questions or, again, interest in those programs, send me a note. If you have any other topics or things you think we should cover, let me know. We're going to be talking about resumes here for a few weeks, and I'd be happy to answer any specific resume questions that you all may have. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you for sticking with me through the freeze, and we will see you next Tuesday here on Trend Tuesday Live. Thank you, everyone.